When you don't carry your past, you can actually be in the present.
Gummi, you've been studying yoga for many years. I don't know how many years it is.
Yeah,
How yoga and Buteyko are connected.
absolutely. I was 23 or 4 years old, and of course, suffering with a lot of anxiety. I was studying psychology, becoming a psychologist with a lot of issues. And I was suffering so much, continuous suffering. I was also just crazy shy. And I went to a yoga class, and it was liberation. I got hooked deeply, and I decided, okay, this modern life and living in society is not for me. I decided I'm going to go somewhere and become a monk and be free from it all. That's what I did. I stopped in my final year of psychology. Everybody just like, what are you doing, man? But it was some kind of a calling. And I went to a center in France. I moved from Iceland to France and become a monk. Well, it didn't last. I met Talia, my wife, and the monkhood kind of went away. But I got deeply involved with it, with the whole aspect of yoga, being movement or sitting, breathing exercise or meditation. And I was practicing hours for 6 hours a day for many, many years. And there was a tremendous change, but at the same time, not. I practiced all the breathing exercises with different kind of ratios. But 2 years ago, I knew some about the mechanics. I'm not very I don't know a lot about anatomy and physiology. I haven't really been deeply interested in it. I'm more interested in probably the esoteric side of yoga, and meditation. But coming to Buteyko, I just started to understand more about the physiology of breathing. I'm still digesting it, 2 years later, because when you're so deeply involved with something and you invest so much time and energy into something, you kind of become engrossed in it. And when new ideas shift and it fundamentally start to change the whole way you think about something, I'm still in the digestive period. I'm still taking it all in, and especially about CO2. This is a topic you don't discuss very much in yoga because it's all about oxygen.
Sure.
So I started to relate it, the poses and the shallow breathing. Well, partly, there was a master. I was part of an organization called Kriya Yoga, and he kept talking about shallow breathing continuously, shallow breathing, shallow breathing. He kept put his hand under his nose, saying, I'm hardly breathing. The breath is so subtle, so fine. I just never clocked it. I don't know. I never clocked it because part of the method was much about the long breath. A lot of the yoga tradition today is about the long breath, and pauses within. But something started to click. And what was very interesting to me was the concept of long pauses and the effect. That was the first thing. And understanding it from the viewpoint of Hatha Yoga. The real Hatha Yoga, the ancient practice of it, is a very intense practice. I don't think it's very much practiced today, or maybe even a little lost. Because I remember having a meeting with Christopher, and he made a comment that the art of training the breath through pauses is a little lost world. I think he is very right. And also, when you talk to people in the world of yoga, they're sometimes a little bit afraid of the breath or the pauses because sometimes the subject is that you can harm yourself so much. Well, what I see today is there's a lot of this kind of rapid breathing techniques, hyperventilation techniques, and to my mind, people are hurting themselves for that. Not being consciously aware of it because this is what is being promoted. but it kind of turned on a lot of bells for me. And number one, the results show for themselves. That's what I think. It is the most change that starting to work with the breath in this way. Yeah, it's just been such an eye opener.
I know you mentioned something about heat earlier.
Oh yeah, the biggest concept in all of Hatha Yoga is transformation of mind through heat.
Mm-hmm.
And I always took it as, I don't have the physiological term for it, but the whole thing of Hatha Yoga is changing the mind through changing the breath. And through the process of that, the alchemy is called heat or Agni in Hatha Yoga. And to me, this started to happen to me actually. The process of doing the poses, doing the shallow breathing, not only warmed my body up like crazy, sometimes just throwing everything off half naked on the floor, but changing the mind. Because one of the most fundamental in the tradition where I studied is it is like you change the mind in order to meditate. And if you don't change your mind, you're continuously sitting with this shit inside all the time. What I found in my own experience that my my mind has changed so dramatically in 2 years. I am not the same person. That has been my kind of thinking. And this is what I'm still digesting. I kind of understand it, but at the same time, I don't.
I had a lot of heat in the form of toxicity and infection. I had high inflammatory discharge, and there was a lot of anger and frustration too, a lot of burning. Is that connected? I had
Absolutely.
a huge amount of burning going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I found was that if I didn't worry about the burning, let myself burn and relax, allow the burning, just let it rest so that I could allow or not resist the burning process.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rest more often for a few minutes here and a few minutes there in order to keep the burning going. If I got too active, it would stop because there'd be some sort of obstruction.
Yep.
And it would turn into pain. But if I kept it burning, then I was better off. And I was on fire quite a lot during my training.
Yeah. I can associate with that. My
Uh,
whole life, it has been fear,
mhm.
anxiety, and fear. What drives anxiety is just fear.
Well, I think it is for all of us.
But I'm becoming more fearless. That's the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
To me, it has been burning away of that creates this fear.
Sure. I carried the world on my shoulders. However I got there, I don't know really, but I did. And the anxiety was visceral. It was part of the body. It was in the tissues.
Absolutely. I so agree with that.
Then it gradually got less and less and less and less. And then now it's mostly about what's going on now. Not so much. There are still a few nooks and crannies that aren't sorted out.
This is our past, and to some degree, the past sits in the body, whether it's from your life or from your ancestor or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what is being burned away. And when you don't carry your past, you can actually be in the present.
Exactly.
I think that's the beauty. So there's a lot of yoga happening here in this method. Maybe it's all yoga. I don't know. I don't know how far I should go.
I found a teacher in England when I was in my early 20s who taught me Vipassana meditation.
Yeah.
So my story is similar to yours. So I was devoted to this meditation and very involved in the organization right up until I started Buteyko.
Yeah.
And then when I started Buteyko and I started training, I realized that this was it. This was the meditation I was trying to get. I was getting it now by doing breath holding.
Yeah. Kind of feeling similar things to what you're saying.
So I would do 10-day silent retreats, and I'd feel better at the end of the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And then a week or two later, I'd feel crap again.
Yeah.
So it didn't sustain. So I was doing something right, but I couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
The difference with this is that you're actually able to hold the change, keep it, and maintain it.
Definitely. That's so transformative. I completely agree. I would do practice, morning practice, and I would feel very good, but it wears off pretty quickly.
Mm.
What I found so interesting, because I'm a little box-like person in many ways. I like the measurement, I love that about the Buteyko. I mean, you see the control post, like I came to the follow-up meetings, and I was listening to you, and you kind of could predict what was going on when the control post was here or there. I found that absolutely amazing science. Unheard of. So phenomenal.
Mm.
And that's what I love, to see
Well,
this change.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that people come with all kinds of symptoms and they say, well, my control pause is 27. And I said, well, I think we'll have to take it again, find out what it is, because there's no way you're going to have all those symptoms with a control pause with 27. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's great for us because if our control pause drops, then we know that something's up. And I've had times in the last 15 years when it has dropped and I've been able to investigate and find out what's going wrong so that I can do something about it. Because a control pause is a diagnostic tool.
It's just absolutely fantastic to see your own state of health in every way, whether it's your body or your mind. It just tells you exactly where you are. And I remember doing it for the first year or so, if I wasn't happy with the control pause, I would write it a little bit higher,
Of course.
Always cheating a little bit, but then it came the acceptance of it is what it is.
Sure. And that whole thing of watching our desire to have things a certain way or being disappointed that things aren't the way we want them to be, and this whole mechanism, the desire mechanism, gradually dissolve.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that. And of course, doing the advanced workshop with Christopher, and coming to the acceptance as things are, I mean, I knew that from the philosophy of yoga. I mean, I've read it all, I've seen it all, but to witness it in your own life and to have that change, it wasn't for me. It wasn't happening, well, to some degree in the yoga within meditation, but it was always this underlying thing. It just wasn't changing. It wasn't budging. That's the reason I kept looking, because to some degree I needed something more to shift. And in the Buteyko, I found it.
Yeah. So it is surprising, isn't it?
Very. I did not expect this result. And I did not expect my mind to change so much. And I did not expect to be kind of pretty happy most of the time. It's not happiness, it's like I can jump off the roof, it's content.
Yeah.
That's the feeling, I don't need very much or want very much, but I'm fine. When I meet most people, I say, "How are you?" They say, "Oh, I'm fantastic." And I say, "Oh, I have this emotional issue." But I'm not fantastic. No, I'm good. That's the feeling, It's just the suffering of the past is just not here. That's a really good burden not to carry.
Yeah, it is. It's also very toxic if you do carry it because it actually leaks into your decision making. One of the things I struggled with when I was ill was when I had to make a big decision and I knew that I hadn't got the mind to do it. It was too affected by the fear that it would take me 3 months, as long as 3 months, to be able to get to the point to decide what to do in terms of moving forwards if there was a decision to make. And the rest was just knee-jerk reactions out of terror.
Absolutely. And for me, just a lot of avoidance. I didn't want to go into these situations because I just knew they would be very difficult for me. And the thing was, I would go into a situation that was difficult and I would just I would just shut off. That was the thing. So yeah, it's been a tremendous change in that way, you know.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is that we become less limited.
Absolutely.
Into different worlds.
Yeah, that's exactly the word, you know. It's not the limit is not there anymore. So it's a freedom. It's a freedom in oneself. Definitely, yes. And that's the whole yoga thing is all about that. They call it moksha, you know, having freedom within your own mind. I found it to some extent. The work continues. But, you know, I feel like I've found something that is tremendous value. It's just no words for it, really. When Christopher says, you know, I'm so lucky I came to this, the first thing I heard him say, you know, I was just like, I'm lucky? I'm not lucky. But now I understand, yeah, it is tremendous luck or blessing or wherever it comes from, you know, but it is. And the ability to do it also. Because I know sometimes self-practice for people, because that's what I do, you know, I teach one-to-one people to self-practice. And their life is they're so wrapped up in their lives that coming just to do a little bit is a tremendous effort. So also just the luck to have the fire to practice and to change yourself. That I feel the method is a driving force in that direction. For me, it was so easy to bring into life because it kind of just seeps into everything. It was just truly a lot of luck. But that's what I felt when I came across, and I felt that was the thing. I felt I was in such a good hand. To me, it is important to feel you're working with really good people.
Oh, absolutely. It's always the people you associate with.
Absolutely. So I feel truly blessed in every way.
Well, I think we all feel like that. So thank you, Gummi. We have the privilege of working with lovely people too.
Isn't it a bit like attract like something like that?
The thing is we get as much benefit as the students because we're in a cycle together. There's a kind of a conduit, there's an opening between the practitioner and the student. So by offering this to other people, then it comes back and feeds us. So it also feeds into our breathing. So we're helping people to improve their breathing. It helps us to improve ours.
Absolutely.
Because it's an ongoing process.
So true. And the yoga tradition that I'm part of, the main person said, for any relationship to work, there needs to be this heart-to-heart connection. And you're absolutely true, you know.
We consider ourselves lucky or blessed to be able to offer it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gummi.
Thank you very much.
Anything to add?
No, I think
You're done.
I'm done. There's a lot of yoga happening here in this method.